Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Matt the Baiter and Bass Food Baits. Thanks for joining us today. Today's kind of just a personal lure making thing for me. I'm not sure if I'll mass produce these or not, but it's one of my favorite lures to fish with. There's lots of great options out there for you to try. But also, if you want to make a lure, this is actually a pretty good one to start with. So let's get into it. I'm doing this as a topwater walking bait, kind of a walk the dog left and right style bait. There's been lots of great walk the dog style baits over the years. We've got a couple of examples over here. Of course, the tried and true spook, the Hidden Zera spook. This one's the puppy. It's a little bit smaller. The reason I grabbed this one is you can actually see the internals on this one. So basically, you can tell there's a little ball bearing in these. Obviously, the bigger the bait, the bigger the ball bearing. They also make them where they're loose in there and it's a rattle chamber, but they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. This is one I custom painted. This is one very similar to what I caught my very first smallmouth in Arkansas on, and you can see it's totally transparent. So it was just the action of the bait that got that strike. It had nothing to do with colors or anything. This is an old-timey one that I refinished. It was pretty gross when I got it, but once I cleaned it up and put a new clear coat on it, it was pretty cool. But again, you can see that ball bearing in the back that works as a rattle, but it also helps keep the bait set like this in the water where the nose sticks up. You want that because it's going to help that bait change directions left and right a lot easier than if the bait was sitting this way. If it was sitting flat, it would just want to pull forward. But because it's this way and because it's round, it naturally wants to change different directions when you pull it forward. So look at this one. Look at this guy. Like, that's a big bait. No, that's a big bait. I assume this is for ocean fishing. I found this at an antique store a couple years ago and had to get it just because I thought it was funny. But, you know, there's another walking style bait here. This is a Bill Lewis. See, it actually has a paddle tail on the back, but it's the same idea in that you can walk it back and forth left and right. 6th Sense makes some great product. Theirs is a little bit different in that it's not round in the head. Then they've actually kind of shaped the mouth of it a little bit, and this bait fishes really, really well. I've actually fished with this one more. You can see it's got a little hook rash, but I've caught some nice fish on these, and this one changes directions at a long, long ways away. So what I'm gonna make is gonna be, it's gonna be a stick bait. A rough sketch here of what I'm gonna do, but you can see right here is the important part. The center of this bait, that weight needs to be positioned back here. I think I'm gonna have probably just 2 hooks on this bait. I feel like a lot of times 3 hooks is too much, especially when it comes time to land the fish. So I'm just gonna have 2 hooks on this bait and maybe 2 weight ports, and the hooks will actually hang down off this bait. It is designed to do that. So again, it's pretty hard to be original with a lot of stuff. This was a fairly original idea, but it's the same thing. So we're gonna get back into what's that mean for my bait? Well, it's a walk the dog bait, so I figured we ought to name it the chili dog. Made sense to me. You know, the overall shape and size, you can see it's pretty similar to a bait fish. It's 4 1/4 inches long. So, you know, there's a lot of fish that kind of covers, whether it's small versions of big fish, bluegill, you know, it's intended to mimic shad, a crappie, white bass, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, Kentucky spotted bass. That's just in the waters that I fish. So, you know, it'll mimic a lot of things. And like I said, even the clear one tricked a smallmouth for me. So the applications for these baits, I like to use these over isolated cover or in isolated cover. They're not great to fish bushes or, you know, really heavy cover, dense grass, because the hooks are exposed. They're going to get caught up and you might even lose your bait. But, you know, if you have isolated cover where it's under the surface of the water just barely, this bait will walk right over the top of that cover and it'll make fish look up. It works. Especially if it's isolated cover. And if there's a bunch of flooded bushes, you're gonna have to fish all of them. But if you can find like one little bush or a tree sticking up out of the water or something, there's nothing else anywhere around it, that's a good spot to locate fish. This is a great bait to locate fish because it can be fished in multiple ways. Another good spot is anywhere that you have ledges or bluff walls. Fish like to sit on those bluff walls in the summertime, and you can literally fish right along the bluff wall, not too far off the edge of the bluff wall, and those fish will come up a long ways from deep water to actually hit those. You got shallow points too. This year we've had so much rain, a lot of our points and even the parks and areas like that are underwater, these points that are typically beaches and stuff like that. So fish will sit on these shallow points and wait in 10 to 12 feet of water, and this is a bait that'll totally bring them up from that. Even in open water, I hear a lot of people talk about a bait this big seems too big to catch a fish. It's really not. And everybody I've heard that's seen stuff like this immediately says, what are you gonna catch with that, a striper? Well, maybe. Out in open water and deep water, you can absolutely catch striper with these. So, but really, shallow water, shallow cover, open water, not a lot of things to get hung up on, but it's a fun way to fish. Topwater blowups are probably my favorite way to catch fish. Now into the bait itself, a lot of this I'm going to get into a little bit more detail than normal with this because I'm going to describe some of the things that Doug Hannon talked about a little more in detail than I will in the future, but there is another channel I'm going to link below called Old School Bass Videos, and it's all sorts of instructional videos from like the 70s and 80s, and it's awesome. I'm really into that stuff. I don't know if because it reminds me when I was a kid or what, but there's a lot of really good information, and there's a lot of great new technology out there, don't get me wrong, but the old stuff and knowing how things have always worked is probably good to know. So looking up things like intuitive angling with Randy Blockett or these old school bass videos, just educate yourself. That's how I'm learning more and more all the time with this stuff. And Doug Hannon was someone that was called the fishing professor. He came up with products like the color selector and stuff like that back in the 80s, and he's a very, very smart man and knew an awful lot about fish, especially bass. And he took kind of a scientific approach, and he caught hundreds of bass over 10 pounds. So I'm going to take his word for it. He seems like he's an honest guy, and he was telling what he was doing. So, there's two parts to a bait, and this is how I'm going to pretty much describe most of my baits from this part forward. You've got qualities that will attract a fish to your bait, and then you have qualities that will actually trigger that fish into striking your bait. Some of the attracting qualities have got me over the years because not only will it attract a fish to your bait, they'll catch fishermen too. You've heard, those baits are made to catch fish, or those baits are made to catch fishermen, not fish. That's not necessarily true, but a lot of times I think that is true. There's more time that goes into making them look good and the packaging and stuff like that, even than how well are they going to really catch fish. Unless you're a professional fisherman and have all this other technology that takes you right to them, you know how to do it. So there's no such thing as a magic lure, but to trick a bigger fish, which is what I'm designing a lot of my lures for, is to catch better quality fish. You got to have a perfect mix of these, and the attracting qualities can be things like large size, bright colors, a short and squatty shape, slow retrieve, and sometimes having a rattle in it. That's not going to actually trigger a fish, though. Those are all things that help a fish locate your bait, locate your lure. The triggering qualities, it's funny because they are 100% the opposite of what I just said. Instead of having a large size, a compact size. Instead of having bright colors, natural colors a lot of times, at least with a bass. I know there's other species that are different, but instead of a short and squatty shape, you need to have a long tapered shape. And instead of a slow retrieve, you should have a fast retrieve. Well, that's just confusing. But really, it's all about the applications and the time. So in clear water, it's different than muddy water. So clear water, bass rely a lot more heavily on their sight, especially Norfolk and Bull Shoals. I mean, you can literally see a long ways underwater. They don't really need you to help them find the lure. They can see it. So, you know, getting them to attack that lure is what's the most important thing. And, you know, according to Mr. Hannon, and I believe this too in my own time fishing here now, too many attracting qualities, whether that be big spinner blades or clack and buzz baits or a bunch of rattles in your bait. In clear water, that's not always a good thing. You want it to be a little bit more of a natural presentation. So in short, in clear water, you kind of want to go with more natural colors and a fast retrieve, because you don't want them to get too good a look at it and realize that that's not actually food. But at the same time, the triggering aspect is probably going to be more in your retrieve of that bait than just the bait itself. You got to know how to fish it. In muddy water, you may need some additional triggering qualities, something to help that fish locate the bait, whether that's rattles or brighter colors that can be seen, you know, a little bit further in murky water. But in general, slower moving baits will produce better in muddy water, just because the bass can find them a little bit easier, or fast moving with a lot of attracting stuff. You know, that's part of the reason a rattle trap or, you know, lipless crankbait with a bunch of rattles works so good. So, you know, Mr. Hannon feels that bass are smart creatures, and over time they grow and learn just like people. And, you know, if you're going to catch a big one, he's been around for a little bit. He's not a new fish. And, you know, that's where I feel like the majority of what's going to be going into these baits is going to be the simplified thought process that seeing that video helped me have. It kind of put all my thoughts in an order, and I think it makes it easier for me to explain it to you why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. But, you know, when you're on the water, don't spend your time thinking about equipment. Don't spend your time overwhelming yourself, even if you're new to fishing or if you've been in it a long time. I mean, I'm a tackle junkie. I obviously have a fishing problem, but when you're on the water, you can't be thinking about all those things. You know, you need to be looking for the spots that the fish should be, whether that's with technology or just with your eyeballs, and not thinking about all these different things in your tackle box. So what's all that mean for this bait? Well, keep it simple, right? Topwater walking bait is an old school proven bait that will work anywhere across the country. For my particular location here in Mountain Home, fishing clear water reservoirs, the attracting qualities are it's the right size. You know, it's not giant, but it's not small. It's a good size meal for them. The colors are going to be natural and realistic. The shape of it's a little bit odd. It's not exactly like a fish, but it's still pretty natural shaped. It's not going to be short and squatty. It'll be long and tapered, and it's got the ability to have from a absolute dead stop to a very fast presentation. So you can fish it really slow, you can fish it really fast. It just kind of depends on your conditions. And when it comes to the triggering aspects of this bait, you know, the natural appearance, putting paint jobs on them that look like crappie and bluegill and shad, bass, that's important in clear water for me. The fact that they are the right size again, it's not something that they're going to swim up to and go, oh, that's not right, and swim away from it. And, you know, the triggering marks will be there. I've got great eyeballs for them. Obviously, I'll put shad dots or the necessary, you know, things on them to make them look like fish. And then the ability to have multiple retrieves. So it doesn't matter if you're in muddy water or if you're in gin clear water, you can fish this bait multiple different ways to catch fish. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed watching the process of me making this lure today. I know it's nothing really fancy or complicated, but I wanted to show you guys too, you don't need a whole bunch of tools really to make a lure. That was actually just a scrap piece of wood that I had that I wanted to make this lure, and I did. Again, I can't thank you all enough for supporting this channel, for giving me an opportunity to go out and chase my dream and start a bait company and make awesome lures for all of you. And I really hope that you're enjoying the content. I know we're working really hard on it. Please leave comments down below if you're enjoying it. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Make sure you share it with your friends. Let's get as many people knowing about Matt the Baiter as we can. And bass food baits will just grow, hopefully. It's something that... leave comments below too. Do you want one of these? Should we do like a subscriber giveaway with one of these? Or should I produce these? There's a lot of competition from great companies out there that I don't feel like this one kind of meets my niche, but I wanted one, so I made it. Anyways, thank you all so much. I really hope you had a great time today. Again, like, share, subscribe, YouTube things, and we will see you very soon. Thanks for watching. A short and squatty shape. Check.